Welcome, Scorpio, to your in-depth weekly astrology overview for week commencing the 20th of July for the ascendant, the sun, or the moon. Going to share the big themes of the week ahead first. On screen is your event chart. I'm going to unpack that. I'll then go through each of the influences in detail. By the end of the video, you'll have a clearer picture of what the planets offer in terms of your energy, work, relationships, or finances. Thank you so much for joining astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so now to help it to continue to thrive. It's a week which sees Mercury go direct. When the sun moves into Leo, its home sign, but for you, critically, right to the top of your chart, a huge boost in terms of your ambitions and goals. But also it's a week, ironically, when Saturn goes into a retrograde through to December. On the screen now, Scorpio, is your event chart. So let's look at Mercury first of all. So Mercury is very much about the conversation. It can be to do with technology, certainly to do with the message, but also it can be to do with precision. And for you, it's been in the ninth house in the watery sign of Cancer. It's more intuitive here, but because of the retrograde for you occurring in that area, there may have been some niggles around travel. It could have been around a contractual matter. If you're waiting for a completion, for example, on a property matter, Cancer very much to do with the home, wouldn't be a complete surprise. But if you have had crossed wires with someone recently, those can now start to unravel. But just be conscious, right at the start of this week, Mercury is squared by the restrictive vibe of Saturn. So one of the things I'd say to you, it is going to be important to attend to the details of this week, even if there's another part of you that would perhaps be more in the mood for escapism or focusing on the big picture. However, we also have at the start of this week Mars, your traditional ruler, in a very solid link to Saturn. If you are focusing on those aforementioned details, perhaps around a financial matter, trying to tease out a bit more value from the resources you've got, your determination to do so, but good planning can really yield dividends. But of course, as last week came to a close, we had that Barbault Basket. It's worth saying with all those players, including the moon at 4 degrees in Libra late on Sunday, that that's a mundane astrology influence. It's about the wider world. But in terms of our personal situation, it depends if you've got planets on those 4 degrees. And if you have, it's going to be much more of a hit. But early on Monday, the moon in that 12th house can generally be a bit on the quiet side, and it does go into an opposition to Saturn. So there may be something that's to do with a routine commitment or obligation that just seems a bit more oppressive as we enter this week, despite all the talk of this dazzling psychological and spiritual reset. Now, as the sun makes its way across that 10th house, your chart immediately becomes very sun dominated, because whichever player is right at the top of the chart of the Northern Hemisphere does have the greatest impact. And the sun is about our core vitality, but it's also about our identity. If you're feeling that you're not getting the recognition for your talents, hard work, or brilliant ideas, you get a great platform over the next month, but not least because the sun edges towards the very expansive and fortunate Jupiter. So this hasn't happened for 11 years. So if you are wanting to, really be much more dynamic in your approach to your ambitions or work, it's certainly a great chance to go for it. What might stop you? Well, just be aware that Chiron, the so-called wounded healer, does square off the sun. If your relationships or how you feel you relate to people in positions of power is an area that you feel a bit tender about, do work on your sense of personal worth and value. Now, as the week goes on, Venus moves forwards and comes into a clash with Mars. And it may be that someone in your friendship circle starts to take on a very evocative appeal that may prove a little difficult to ignore. But then again, in an existing relationship, because we had that bumpy week last week with Venus in a square to Uranus, if you have been feeling a bit unhappy, Venus in that 11th house is asking this existential question. Do you feel the person you're with is truly right for you for the long term? Because the 8th house is very much about commitment. Or if you don't really fancy them as much as you could do, that can give you food for thought as well. Yet, despite that, you could have a happy connection with someone later on this week as Mercury emerges from that retrograde, forges a sparkling alliance to Venus, and there could be contact from someone you haven't seen for a while. You can meet up with a friend and have a really jolly night. But as we come to the end of the week, Saturn goes into a retrograde, joining up with Neptune in your 6th house. So however much the arrival of the sun in that most prominent and influential location is asking you to raise your energies and be in touch with people who can affect your long-term future in a very dynamic way, there may be another part of you that could just lack a little bit of vitality or even self-belief. Don't let any self-criticism or overthinking inhibit going for that golden prize. I'm going to summarize those 4 areas of vitality: work, relationships, and finances next, Scorpio. Just to say, the video I recorded at the end of last week was about Uranus and Pluto, your modern ruler, because they formed a connection on the 18th, and also they reconnect exactly on the 26th of November. But they're also going to be connecting again in a trine 3 more times over the next couple of years. So I feel it's actually the motor, if you like, the engine room of this Barbault Basket we've all just experienced. And for you personally, if you'd like to understand more about what that means for you, because it is quite intriguing, please click on the eye on the italic eye on the screen, or I'll put the video under this one and you can check it out too. I've also done a video on the second 6 months of the year because I feel that provides a wider lens on everything that's going on, and you can check that out too, please. You can also order your year 2027 Natal Forecast and get it absolutely free. You'll get the rest of this year too, and you'll get your life roadmap report, but also your Draconic soul karmic analysis in my 3-for-1 offer, personal horoscopes. Please see below more about that if you'd like to work with me one-to-one, and also if you'd like to sign up for your free written daily horoscope. So as far as energy is concerned, having Saturn and Neptune by the end of this week retrograde in the 6th house does suggest you need to pace yourself. If you're trying to do too much, that can be counterintuitive. Uh, Mercury can be very much to do with the nervous system, but also a desire to be a free spirit in the 9th house. So a bit of resentment could be driving the exhaustion as well, if it feels your life is a bit too much give and not so much personal freedom and get. As far as your romantic relationship is concerned, Venus is asking you really to think, is it for the long term? If it is for the long term, I feel that's not going to be an issue this week. But just generally for Scorpios over the next couple of years, I think if you are single, there could be some very powerful connections, and they could be very intense, but they could also be extremely intimate, but not necessarily long lasting. As far as your career is concerned, you cannot get better than the sun moving to the top of your chart and applying to Jupiter. That's just stunning, but also linking back to Neptune, linking back to Uranus. So if you are someone who wants to seize that prize, I feel there's lots of encouragement, but it's all about taking the initiative and being comfortable in that rarefied air, which is to do with success. As far as your financial situation is concerned, for sure the 8th house can be about joint resources, but I think Saturn's link to Mars at the start of this week is urging you to really grapple with the details. The more you look at what you've got and your regular budget, the chances are more you can the more that you can squeeze out extra value. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Scorpio. Have a great week, and I hope to see you again soon.